If you've been by our booth, you would have seen these awesome App47 stress balls. I brought them up here for two reasons. If you ask me a question, I'll toss you one. If I catch you texting, I'll throw one at you too as well. So I'm here to talk a little bit about app stores. There's a lot going on around app stores today, and it kind of leads me to an effect. I don't watch the show, or you can't watch it anymore, but my wife tells me about it. It's the Oprah effect. You get an app store, you get an app store, you get an app store. Everybody wants an app store, and whether it's the app store that we all know in iTunes or Google Play or Amazon, or it's our internal app store, it's incredible in the number of app stores that are out there. And so we're going to talk through a few of them today and what's going on with app stores. So let's start with the most well-known ones out there. So iTunes. iTunes is the first one. It's also probably the most well-known one. It's the one that's paid the most revenue out to the developers. So that's an awesome fact by itself. It's like $3 billion that this been paid to the developers. So if you think about that and just take a step back as an entrepreneur, think about that market size that was created, only 4 years ago. I go to an investor and I talk to an investor about a $3 billion market that's going to be created in 3 years. They'll write a check right there. So it's an awesome thing that has happened, not just with iTunes alone, but what has happened with applications in general. But iTunes definitely started. So there's a lot of value there, but I think there's also value that you may not know about. If you work in the government or you work in the enterprise, there's a lot going on in the enterprise with the iTunes, with B2B programs, volume purchasing programs. There's a lot of work inside of iTunes that can be used to do things outside of just your standard consumer app, your Angry Birds or Angry Farts or whatever you want to build as far as a consumer app. If you're not familiar with those, stop by App47. We'll tell you a little bit more about them. But because our platform can help you with those. But there's a lot of value in iTunes in itself. But at the same time, there's a lot of value. There's a lot of constraints there, as everybody is very familiar with. There's only certain APIs that you can use, certain types of applications you can deploy, certain ways you can deploy it, and so it is restrictive at the same time that it's very helpful. Google Play, another well-known one, another one that pays out a lot of money to its developers, another solid platform that's out there from an SDK, from a development environment. All those things are awesome. It has things like in-app purchases, same thing with, obviously iTunes that has that. The thing that I think is probably interesting about the first couple of app stores that I'm going to talk about is, and I think it's part of their success criteria, is they do more than just mobile apps. They have digital content. Think about it as a digital content store. They have books. They have movies. They have music. And so if I'm a consumer and I get to put my credit card into one place and I get a couple things out of it, that's an awesome experience. And so some of the reasons I think that they're out in the lead, other than being first, and certainly having that name recognition, is that. And that goes the same for Amazon. Amazon is a great store. It's on almost every Android device that I can find, whereas Google Play is limited to only sanctioned Google devices. So there is some limitation in there. There's no portability between Amazon and Google. In terms of if I buy something on Amazon, it doesn't work on my Google Play account, and vice versa. But the Android experience is extremely rich there, and applications are found in both. So as a developer, it presents a bit of a paradox. Do I deploy into Google? Do I deploy into Amazon? Do I deploy into many of the other stores I'm about to talk about? And at least when it comes to Google and Amazon, absolutely, deploy to both of those. If you find a market in one of the other app stores, you deploy it in those. So you deploy as many places as you can. So one other one I want to talk about real quick before we get into the other ones is actually Windows Phone, and it's something that you really want to consider if you're doing anything with the enterprise. Think about it this way: the enterprise is always very focused on deployment. They're always focused on security. They're always focused on security, and they're always focused on security. So, and the reason I bring this up is think about who owns the infrastructure of the IT ops. It's Microsoft. They own AD. They own SharePoint. They own Exchange. In terms of what does the enterprise use? Now, yes, Google, in terms of Gmail and Google Apps, has made a huge insurgence in the last 5-10 years. But when you look at the enterprise as a whole, it's Windows. So I think it's going to be very interesting over the next year or two, hopefully it's not that long, to see what Windows and Microsoft is able to do with their existing infrastructure and the capabilities that they're introducing there. So they're not obviously at the same level as iTunes and Google Play, but definitely one to keep an eye on. Two other ones that to kind of note real quick, the Blackberry App Store and the Nokia, definitely players in the space. I would say they're either staying neutral or declining a little bit. They're not growing like the other app stores. And then what's really interesting is there's a ton, and I mean a ton of other app stores that are out there. These are app stores that you can find that have special focus areas of either productivity or games or only free apps. So there's a lot of choices out there as you as a developer and as well as the consumers that are out there to choose from and how to work with those. And so we see more and more of these. This is actually doing a search earlier this week that we found these. Probably if I did this presentation next week, I might have one or two slides, or I'm sorry, one or two images more on that slide. So a lot of choices as a developer. I think you really have to look at what market is that app store addressing and what are you looking to achieve with that. But wait, there's one more. There's one more kind of app store, and that's as App47, it's one of the things that we do. So it's a little bit of self-promotion. I'll admit to that now. But the Enterprise App Store is a different kind of app store, but it's a growing, emerging app a type of store that's out there. So what is it, real quick? So app stores, Enterprise App Stores, it allows you to internally deploy private applications out to your employees securely, tied to your AD credentials or whatever authentication system you use. It allows you to maintain control of that. And why would you do this? Why would you take the time to deploy an Enterprise App Store? Well, if you're a product company, you might do it just to deploy your test builds. How do I get my test builds out to my testers so that they can be on the latest version at all times? And I can control access to who has it. It might be just for curated app stores. A lot of companies are saying, I want you to use Expensify Pro and I want you to use Evernote, and these are the applications that we're using. But if you go and do a query about Evernote and iTunes, you're going to get a response of about 500 applications. So which Evernote application should I use? And lastly is the private apps. Why would you want to be able to control and distribute those private apps? So that's kind of what Enterprise App Stores are. And so the next question is, because this isn't a store that you would go to iTunes or Apple for, Apple or Google for, then the question is, so do I buy it or do I build it? And we actually just did a publication on this, working with a CIO magazine, talking about this sort of buy versus build decision. And the analogy or the thought process goes something like this. If you take a look at what it takes to stand up an Enterprise App Store, day one, the decision's pretty simple. You go build it. It seems odd for me saying that because that's what I want to have everybody come to talk to me about. But if you want to start thinking about, well, how do I tie it into my AD system? How do I make sure that everybody's upgraded? How do I make sure that everybody's working on the latest version? How do I make sure that I work with volume purchasing program? How do I make sure that I'm working with all the new app stores that are coming out and incorporating that into a curated app store and doing that across my entire enterprise? The decision's not as clear. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, 1 minute. Okay. Well, you still have one then. All right. That's all you really wanted? So the Enterprise App Store is real simple, straightforward when you sit down and you think about it, and it seems pretty obvious. And we've actually had some prospects come to us and say, hey, that looks pretty straightforward to do. I think we're going to go do it. They call us about 2 months later and say, hey, it wasn't so easy. Why don't we set one up? So again, my name is Chris Schroeder. I'm with App47. We're outside. Stop by if you want. Talk a little bit more about Enterprise App Store, mobile application management. And thank you for your time today.